Hi and welcome to the Discover History YouTube channel. This year is the 80th anniversary of the Battle of Britain, so it seems a good idea to do a few videos on the battle itself. This first one basically being an overview of the battle itself before we get into more detail. So this is going to be just a bit of a timeline, who the commanders are and what planes are involved in this battle. So we go back to May 1940. You've got the Battle of France, and then you've got the Dunkirk evacuation. And when that's over, Hitler's next plan is to compel the British to a negotiated peace, an armistice, a negotiated peace. He didn't really want a war with Britain. He'd been told by his mysticists that any war with Britain would end in defeat for Germany. So he didn't really want to carry on fighting Britain, but Britain was having none of it. We weren't going to give him the peace he wanted. We weren't going to give him the armistice. His only option really was to invade, and to do that, the first thing he had to do was knock out the RAF. Now, Paul did a video yesterday, a couple of days ago, about the Zeppelin bomb when in the First World War Britain was bombed by the big airships. This Battle of Britain is basically the same sort of thing. Germany's going to send its bombers across, but this time it's got a lot more organised opposition to overcome. So the Battle of Britain, two forces. Basically it's a straight out fight between the Luftwaffe, German Air Force, commanded by Hermann Goering, himself a World War I fighter pilot, and in fact he was the last commander of von Richthofen's squadrons in the First World War, and that's against Hugh Dowding, Air Chief Marshal Hugh Dowding, in charge of RAF Fighter Command. It's going to be a straight up fight between these two gentlemen. He also was a First World War pilot and a squadron commander. He was notably on the Somme, where he fell out with Hugh Trenchard, another Second World War air general, basically. So yeah, both got experience in the First World War, but of course this war's totally different. So what are we up against? What forces are we looking at? The RAF, of course, is iconic. If you know anything about Second World War, and if you don't, you'll have seen these around. It's the RAF's fighter command with its Hurricane fighters and its Spitfires, two iconic aircraft of the Second World War, up against the Messerschmitt 109, Germany's premier single-engine fighter, in fact the only single-engine fighter it had at the beginning of the Second World War, and then a series of two-engined bombers. This is representative. This is a Junkers 88 dive bomber. But most German planes, well, all the German planes except one, were twin-engine light to medium bombers. And then there was one other plane which again is iconic, and that's the Ju-87 Stuka dive bomber. So, after the Battle of France, he's got to get across the channel. He's got to knock the RAF out of the sky first. Historians generally put down the Battle of Britain as lasting from the 10th of July 1940 to the 31st of October, and in between those dates there are a few set phases. It's not clear cut. There is quite a bit of crossover between one phase and the other, but generally speaking these phases do sort of match what happened in the battle itself. So 10th of July is when in this country we accept that the Battle of Britain started. And so did the Germans. And the first thing the Germans did was to knock out our convoys. They wanted to starve us, basically. So they started a series of bombing attacks on convoys in the Channel, using their Stukas, using their Junkers 88 dive bombers to try and knock out the convoys. That also had the added advantage of drawing the RAF out into the Channel so that they could assess the strength of the RAF's response to these attacks. So yeah, Stukas will go out, Ju-88 will go out, bomb the convoys, but then they're also escorted by Messerschmitt 109s, 110s that could basically challenge Britain's fighter force. This went on to about the 12th of August. It's called the Channel Fight in England. It's the Kanalkampf in German. And while this is going on, they're also bombing coastal cities, anywhere with a port, anywhere with an aircraft factories, something like that. So it's not just the convoys, they're also bombing coastal towns up and down the British coast. And while this is going on the 16th of July, Hitler asks the army to prepare an invasion force. And that's when they start organising a lot of canal boats and barges on the northern French coast and ports there, ready for an invasion, when Hermann Goering has knocked out the RAF. So 12th of August comes, and it seems to be, at least to Goering, that he's winning. He's tested the RAF, he's seen what their response is, he's knocked a few ships out, seems to be going well. Come the 13th of August, and this is what the historians say, come 13th of August, there's a change. From that channel fight, Hitler orders him, he's got to knock out the RAF. They've seen how strong the RAF is, now they need to destroy the RAF. And on the 13th of August, the tactics change. They're still bombing the coastal cities, but basically a new operation is launched. It's the Alder Angriff, the Eagle Attack. And it starts on the 13th with Eagle Day. And that is basically a sustained attack against radar stations on the coast, and these chain home stations, which gave the British an advantage in this fight, but the radar basically, and they could see the German bomber formations coming across the channel and be up and about in time to receive them. This is very important to the British, and the Germans see this as very important, and they send their Stukas and their dive bombers to destroy these radar towers that are set along the south coast. They think they destroy that will blind the RAF. What they don't realise is that the RAF has other eyes. They have the observer corps, basically, which are people sat on cliff tops watching for planes coming across, and they're reporting in, because these radar towers are part of a big system. There's telephone lines inland to big operations rooms that are plotting the course of bomber formations coming across the channel. Knock these out, and yes, you are partly blinding the RAF, but they've got the observer corps, they've got the telephone lines, it's part of a big system, so knocking that out is not actually going to do a lot, really. And they also attack the airfields. Now, the list that's drawn up, and this is when you get Germany's main medium bomber, the Heinkel 111, coming into play. It's not been seen yet as such, because they've been using their small and medium bombers on the convoys, but now they send their big boy across to bomb the airfields. Now, the list of targets that the Luftwaffe have got, their intelligence isn't that good. They do bomb fighter airfields in southern coast of it, in southern England, but a lot of RAF fighter stations are operating from grass strips. So you can destroy the grass strip a little bit, make a big hole, but it can soon be filled in. And it wasn't that effective at knocking out fighter airfields. The other problem they got with their intelligence was that they had a whole list of airfields that they wanted to destroy, and thought that could knock out the whole of the RAF, especially fighter command. But they were also, as well as bombing fighter airfields, they were bombing coastal command airfields, bomber command airfields. So basically they were spreading their effort away from the main threat to their air forces, which was fighter command. Bomber command is an interesting one, because we talk about Battle of Britain, we talk about fighter against German bomber, but there was this other campaign going on, which I'll do another video on, basically. But bomber command at this time was very active bombing Germany. That's another interesting topic. But this, like I said, this video is concentrating on fighter command in the Battle of Britain. So it's an intense bombing campaign against RAF airfields, but it's spread out over a lot of different airfields. It's not that effective. And Göring had promised Hitler that he would destroy the RAF on this Eagle Attack in days, if not weeks. It didn't work out that way, and by the 6th September, tactics changed. The fact that the RAF was able to survive this Eagle Attack and still send planes up, still knocked down bombers, still knocked down fighters. Churchill gave his famous "Never in the Field of Human Conflict" speech on the 20th of August to say just how well the few had been doing against the Luftwaffe. So, not doing very well, this Eagle attack at all. Then on the 6th of September, there's another change. The coastal cities are still being bombed, and so are industrial targets in London. And then there's the one attack on London itself on civilians. 6th September, they hit a civilian population on purpose. Some people say it's by accident, but the video I'll do on Bomber Command have been bombing Berlin, and as a retaliation, this is when Hitler hits London. So on the 7th of September, there's a change. From then on, the knocking out the RAF on the ground seems to be less important, and suddenly by day and by night, London is being attacked intensively. Day and night attacks on London, trying to knock the RAF out the air still, to not concentrating on the fight of airfields as such. It's basically revenge. They're going for revenge now. They want to lower the morale of the British people. They can't knock the RAF out the sky, so let's lower the morale of the British population and get them to an armistice that way. So that carries on until the 30th of September. Now, right in the middle of this, there's the 15th of September, what we now commemorate as Battle of Britain Day, the most intensive day of attacks against London. Hundreds of bombers all day in waves coming across, the RAF going out to meet them. A lot of casualties on the day, probably the highest casualties of the whole campaign. 29 RAF fighters are shot down, and there's about 59 Luftwaffe planes actually destroyed. So this goes on till the end of September. But Battle of Britain Days is almost like the culmination of the air war against the RAF. And on the 16th of September, straight after what we call the Battle of Britain Day now, Hitler indefinitely postpones Operation Sea Lion, which was a proposed invasion of Britain. That's now basically called off. Göring hasn't done what he said he was going to do. He hasn't destroyed the RAF on the ground or in the air. Hitler cannot see any way that he can get his troops across the Channel to invade. That's not the end of the campaign, though. It carries on up to the end of October, basically. So the whole of October is nighttime attacks constantly on London. And then, instead of daylight attacks, because they've lost so many bombers and they want to concentrate them on nighttime attacks, fighter bombers start to come across. Tip and run raids into Britain by Messerschmitt 109 fighter bombers, Messerschmitt 110 fighter bombers. Very much like later on in 1941, the RAF indulged in a set of rhubarbs over Europe, hitting targets of opportunity, fighter bombers basically. That's what was happening during the day up to the 31st of October, and at night time it was constant attacks on London. After that, the daytime raids drop off, and then that's when really, from the 31st of October, Battle of Britain ends and the Blitz starts. Now the Germans would say that the Battle of Britain carried on until May 1941 when the Blitz ended. We say officially the Battle of Britain ended on the 31st of October. That is just a real basic overview of the Battle of Britain. I will do more videos. I'll be very interested in hear your comments, your opinions on the Battle of Britain. Could the Germans have won? What they could have done right? I don't like what ifs, but you know, could the Germans have won the Battle of Britain? Well, I really hope you enjoyed that video. Please like and subscribe. If you like this video and you like our other videos, like and subscribe to be kept up to date with all our latest videos coming up. And we'll see you again. I think Paul's going to do, I'm not sure what Paul's doing tomorrow. He's going to do another video tomorrow, and we'll see you then. Bye.